It's pretty obvious that a key way to avoid death in many forms of combat is to block, or even better, if you have the option, parry your enemy's attack. If you can't do that, then a great fallback is to endure with powerful armor, or avoid being close to an enemy and use every trick in the book to eliminate your foe first. But as is also obvious from the title, how about I do none of that? In my latest venture into Ghost, thanks to two very similar suggestions, one from CZ Gameplay and another from Lemon F4U, I will not be allowed to ever block, parry, wear any armor that isn't the broken armor, equip any charms, use any resolve attacks, or use any weapon that isn't the sword. It is suggested that I'm not allowed to take damage in duels, but honestly, I forgot that rule. So as a balance, I'm not allowed healing of any form. Even picking myself up when downed is off limits. And I'm really gonna miss that. Also, Ghost stance is off limits just to make it a little bit harder. All on lethal difficulty, of course. With the rules explained, we can... Wait a second, I do have one more thing. I'm excited to say I recently got my very first fan art from the very talented Notbailey art over on Instagram. I look way cooler in this art than in reality, and boy do I prefer this. Okay, now we can go die horribly as Jin forgets how to defend himself. Our first test does not begin facing down the Mongol horde, though it does make me quite suspicious watching a lone samurai rise from death, take a short stroll on the beach, stand unflinching before the Mongols, and then fall over dead without anyone actually striking at him. He's definitely faking, and I'm not the last remaining samurai, but this guy's smart enough to avoid the responsibility I must now undertake. No, none of that is the real first test. My first test happened years before as I sparred with my uncle. The game wants me to block, and while I have no way around it as a tutorial, I certainly try to avoid it despite how much my cruel uncle beats me. This is how one builds familial resentment, but I'm sure this is the last time he'll beat me silly, right? Back to the present, the nice thing about being a weak warrior is the Mongols are very considerate and only send in their own weak warriors during Act 1 to fight me, so I don't really have to worry about beating them. Maybe I do have to worry about embarrassing myself with a sloppy landing, but you don't really have to worry about that too much when you're killing everyone who witnessed your folly. Well, unless I'm not the best about dodging, then I'll find myself dead regardless of how weak my enemy is. This is why I prioritize spa time, so I can have some more health, so that instead of dying in one hit, there's a small chance I'll die in 2 hits. Helping Yuna is a breeze. Helping Sensei Insufferable is a hard win that keeps pushing me over. I did look pretty cool facing all the invaders down, sword against their rain of arrows. Well, until they cut me down, that is, but still, at least it was for a little. Helping Lady Masako is a joy, but helping my old friend Ryuzo is less fun when I learned the dangers of being trapped against a wall as a bloodthirsty swordsman charges you. In fact, who needs a wall to trap you when you can just be slow getting away from the long combo of these swordsmen? These guys love to be the biggest problem right away, as while they do offer many opportunities to be parried or blocked, dodging is not the best counter as they have great reach and a very long combo that's quite quick. If I'm not on top of repeated rolls away, I will likely find myself playing the role of worm food quite quickly. But worry not, as I discovered trying to speed kill the brute that almost slays Ryuzo, or while trying to reach archers that taunt me from high above, there are always more ways that I can find myself dying. Variety is the spice of death, right? As I insist on attacking every Mongol outpost I stumble upon, I'm also once again taught the valuable lesson that without parrying, I have less opening to strike back, as dodging will only keep me unstruck, but fail to create an opening in the enemy's defenses as they love to strike back to back. Instead, they make me drag both them and the fight out, waiting for the key moments where their guard is dropped and I can strike without risking a mortal injury in return. It may be slower going, but it's both effective and actually quite enjoyable. Makes me feel like I'm better at the game than I am. Before an annoying archer reminds me of my true skill level, that is. I'm disappointed how many times I falter before the leaders of Azamo Bay, as I consistently dodge too soon and suffer for it. If only I maintained the same level of skill killing them in duels as I do outside of duels, especially given how much experience I have fighting them, but apparently that is just asking too much of me. At least I'm able to give aid to Lady Masako in repelling Mongol fighters and allowing her to bury her fallen sons. I hope she's prepared to dig another hole when my attempt to ambush her has quite the impact on me, especially in regards to my shins. But other than these few moments, things in Act 1 go well as ever, and I find myself facing off against Ryuzo in no time as he stands between me and saving my uncle. Imagine my surprise after all the time I've spent fighting him when I actually do beat my traitorous friend on my first try. Per usual, with a good deal of my successes, I am more shocked than anyone. But worry not, the scales of the universe balance themselves seconds later when I'm killed by a random guard. That is more like me. I will say the beginning of my true troubles is here, as I usually have little trouble taking back this fort with the help of my uncle, but not this time. Archers catch me almost every try, and having so many enemies in such close proximity equals a bad time for little Jin. I can probably chalk this many deaths up to my rushing nature though, as in theory, a patient, careful approach should have made the archers a non-problem as I baited out the rest of the attackers, but it took me way too long to do so. Wait a second, it says here that it only took me 8 deaths over 9 minutes? My god, I could have sworn it was more like 30 minutes. I guess whether it's Thanksgiving or getting murdered by invaders, spending time with family when you'd really rather not does make everything feel way longer than it actually is. Then again, maybe it's not my uncle's fault, as a short time later I'm defending a healer monk from waves of attackers and die 7 times in 7 minutes, and that felt so much longer. It might be because it's 30 minutes worth of stress condensed into a few minutes as I struggle to stay ahead of the numerous people whose only wish is to see me dead. That has a way of changing one's perspective on time when my time keeps getting cut short. In order to recover from that, I pop by a Ronin duel, slay him no problemo, then die a bunch more to a random Mongol camp. It's good to know duels are where I can shine, but I wish that applied in all aspects of combat. At least while helping my uncle take another fort, our only form of bonding apparently. It may not start off strong, but it does end strong. The key to winning every combat is truly the constant switching of stances. Every problem? I got a stance for that. Especially water stance, my favorite of the stances, as it's both highly effective against shield enemies, but also brutes. I don't even bother with moon stance, the stance made specifically to kill brutes, because water's power attacks will work just as well to interrupt and drown them. Plus, it just looks cool, and I'd say that's even more important than saving everyone's lives. While helping Norio the monk free a village from Mongol control, I often find myself falling in combat as I struggle to save the hostages before they're killed, which just gets both of us killed. I just wish they'd die alone. Not that it does me much good, it's just more the principle of it. That and indoor combat is my bane. It must never happen, as it's way too close quarters for my dodging to do me much good. Not that being outside works well for me either, as I try to save a bunch of monks from being overrun. It's funny how this portion is the easiest thing ever if you take advantage of a bow or ghost weapons to even things out since I'm so outnumbered, but without those, the sheer amount of spears overwhelm me repeatedly. Can't you see, Uncle? The amount of variants of Jin that die trying to hold this many attackers off, plus keep Norio alive at the same time, is far greater than if I just shot them. To be fair, Uncle didn't say anything about fighting without armor, so that part is on me. The only way I do win is by focusing on keeping the distance as I await the perfect strike, and then most importantly, breaking Uncle's rule about turning my back on the enemy as I loop them around this house so I can pick up Norio and pull myself out of this death loop, so that I can enter into a smaller death loop against a wave of invaders at the nearby temple, but at least there's much more space and kinder checkpoints so I don't have to loop for long. I go for a little, clearing out both Straw Hat traders and Mongols without too much trouble, especially with my aforementioned beloved water stance to keep me breathing, until I'm ambushed and knocked out by Ryuzo. In order to escape, I'll have to kill a somewhat sizable group of Straw Hats, something that was so easy to do last time I was here, as my bow-only run made light work of these mercenaries. Not the case here. Where those other moments of repeat deaths made a few minutes feel like an hour, this felt like an hour because it really was an hour. If I do not roll away, there is a small chance I'll perform a perfect dodge, but what I lack is the skill to do that on purpose. So if I'm not rolling, I'm falling with how fast these Straw Hats are. I try to keep the distance to my advantage, but I keep getting pushed up against a wall, a rock, or more men trying to kill me, and that never ends well. It really hurt to beat every one of them except for a single fighter after half an hour of fighting, just for me to lose when I get stuck in a corner. It's much easier to perfect dodge their unblockables, but even that's not a reliable moment with just how many of them are willing to attack back to back. Hit and runs, as always, are my most reliable tactic, combined with taking advantage of the piercing strike, a move I normally rarely use, but it is quite handy to nearly finish each Straw Hat off in one go. They'll deflect if I try and do it twice in a row, but just run around for a little and they'll forget, allowing me to finish each one off bit by bit as long as I keep my distance from the others, and probably pray a lot. That really hurt, but overcoming that clears the way for an easy retaking of our castle and the defeat of Ryuzo in a rematch. He doesn't put up much of a battle, going down after only one loss against him, but his death is the final moment before Jin's uncle turns fully against him over Jin's less than honorable actions. I feel like I've been fighting more honorably than even my uncle, but I guess Jin poisoning all the Mongols against his uncle's wishes rubs some people the wrong way. We all have off days, jeez. With Jin's group on their own, Act 3 flies by as it always does, just long enough for me to cry over my horse. There's a bigger snag as I struggle with this Mongol camp, and I gain more evidence for why I hate archers so much. A much smaller snag is sneaking past these Mongols without killing them, since that will trigger the alarm. But I learned in a previous run, the power of the tree makes all things possible. The Lorax had the right idea. Then here we are against the Khan himself. So I did beat all the story duels without blocking the last run as a fun little addition to my bow-only challenge. So you'd think this part would be pretty easy after doing it before, even with these new variations added in this time, right? Not at all. The Khan is never easy, with his wide sweeping attacks constantly repeating and giving very little room for counterattack. But throw in some luck, with lots of running away before leaping in on him, and there's a good chance he won't be prepared and I can take him down. But after waiting out the poison that he counterattacks with, my odds only get so much worse. I need to defeat both him and all his men, and this rarely goes well. For an hour and 20 minutes, I taste steel as I struggle against this many powerful enemies all at once. My death count skyrockets as I fail to dodge fast enough, and I often find myself at the mercy of the Khan when he strikes faster than I can react. My hit and run tactic is pretty effective on him, but it's not foolproof as some of his moves go faster than me even while I'm already in mid-strike. Add on to that, all these enemies trying to bomb, shoot, and stab me makes for a very painful experience. But no matter how many times I fall, I'll get back up and try again because I just can't let these guys have the satisfaction of beating me. I must ensure their blades rust and break sooner than my spirit does, and no matter how long it takes, that is always the case. Enough careful hit and runs, enough rolling all over the place, and frankly, enough luck provides me the victory I have so craved over the Khan. With his death, the Mongols still control most of the island, but I'm sure they'll be chill, right? Maybe that samurai from the start of the game will finally contribute. Or my uncle and all his reinforcements, as I have died enough for this island, so I'm tapping out, thank you very much. Only problem is, Uncle's already busy, as revisiting my home together causes him to remember all those fond moments he used to beat me with his wooden sword, and now he's gonna do it again with his real sword. He also makes me wear my Ronin outfit, which I can't get out of, which really does suck. But on the bright side, he only beats me down twice before I switch into the groove of his attacks and keep up the dodging long enough to best him. This is what happens when you beat me for so long, Uncle. I wish it was a wooden sword to teach him a proper lesson, but this will have to do. Huzzah! After 16 hours, 45 minutes, and 342 deaths, I've beaten most of Ghost without blocking and all that other jazz. It's a lot to say, okay? You can read, maybe? There's always the tutorials in forced sections, like the forced Ronin outfit in artillery area, but that was less the point compared to the challenge of it all. It was a great challenge, and I really do appreciate both the suggestions and everyone watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm off now to stare at this fan art again and wish I really was this cool in reality. Stare at what you want in order to become it, right? I'll just keep staring until my eyes water, and maybe I will be this cool. Definitely have worse eyesight, that's for sure. I wish you all the best, friends. I'll see you next time for Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3 as only wild magic sorcerers. Bye for now.